Before you get a kettlebell overhead, you really want to make sure that you have the mobility to be able to do it safely and effectively. So what you can do is mimic the overhead lockout position just without a weight and see if you can get into it comfortably. So the first thing to do is just straighten your arm out over your head. Your arm should be vertical, elbows should be locked, and your little finger should be turned in just slightly towards your body. We'll go through a little bit more why this is important in the next video. The next thing to take a look at is your lower body. What we want in overhead lockout position is a very slight anterior pelvic tilt. So if I roll my pelvis forward this way, that's an anterior pelvic tilt. If I roll it backwards, I've got a posterior pelvic tilt. So we just want a very slight anterior pelvic tilt. And what this will help us do is get the weight of the kettlebell over the top of our hips so that the lower body can support the weight. Now, if you're finding that any of the following are happening, it usually means that you're probably lacking mobility in the upper body, usually in the shoulders, elbow, or upper back, or you may be lacking some lower back mobility in order to be able to get into this position properly. So if lockout looks a bit like this, it's usually chest, shoulder, and things like biceps and forearms might be very tight if you can't actually get the elbow into that locked out position. If you're coming out to the side to get your arm straight, if you can't actually straighten it here, if you're looking like this here, and you can get it straight here, usually around the shoulder, chest area is very tight, and that'll need a little bit of work first. If you're finding that you can get your arm straight, but only by pushing your pelvis forward and getting a posterior pelvic tilt, then your problem is probably going to be upper back or thoracic mobility. So if your upper back's not mobile enough, then you'll compensate by moving your lower body, and you don't want that either. So just make sure that you can actually get into that good position first before you put a kettlebell in your hand and try and do it. And if you find that you're having any of those problems at all, you'll need to look at some mobility work. So things like hanging off a chin-up bar with your arms vertical, things like broomstick dislocation, so holding a broomstick and just rotating it backwards and forwards. There are all sorts of other things you can do in order to help improve that mobility, and I'll put some links to some videos that might help you too.